Well, I hope that was a fruitful discussion of some kind, looking at the things that trip us up, that cause us to take our eyes off God and to begin to lose the perspective and start to get resentful. What happens to us, isn't it? Those kind of things suddenly change where we are, and we begin to get discouraged, and we lose heart. But the psalmist doesn't leave it there, of course. In this next section, the central section, which is important, and if those who have been keen might have already started jumping towards it, you'll notice that actually there is a turning point here. So the psalmist doesn't leave us there, but takes us to a turning point. And it starts in verse 15. In verse 15, it says this: "If I had said, I will talk on in this way, I would have been untrue to the circle of your children." The key word to understand here is your, because this is the first time that the psalmist addresses God. Up until now, the psalmist has been talking to himself or to expressing it to others. Doesn't that happen to us? Before we pray, we talk it over with everybody else. We talk it over with our own heads. We chew it over, but we won't go to the one place where actually it'll get resolved. But in verse 15, your shows us that the psalmist is beginning to turn and stop looking at the problem and looking at God. Your. So that's the key. And then the psalmist emphasizes it all the more in verse 17. Verse 16 says, "When I thought how to understand this, it seemed to me like such a wearisome task until I went into the sanctuary of God." Here's the turning point. It is wearisome. Don't we weary ourselves with going over stuff, chewing it over, gossiping about it with other people, expressing our resentment or anger or whatever? Much better, the psalmist says, to go into the sanctuary of God. And that doesn't necessarily mean the temple, it just means into the presence of God, into the place of God. And it could be into church or into home group, where the promises of God, we're reminded of the promises of God. We're reminded of the journey of Israel, that God has been faithful, and so on. And that coming into the sanctuary enables a new perspective. So what I want you to do just for a moment is, if you can think, perhaps when there's been a time when you've lost sight and you come into the sanctuary, and it's been a transformative moment for you. Okay? So just think about that for a moment. What's been a transformative moment for you when you've gone into the sanctuary of God and you've seen it differently? And we'll look at the psalmist's perspective in just a moment. But just share your own experience at this point.